It is time for our second hour. Thank you, producers. I already see so many questions in the mix as we get started with this conversation around AI, artificial intelligence. Pretty much since 2022, office hours, we've been really doing a lot just around talking about how we're using it in our workflow. Whenever there's new technology coming out, you hear it here first. So hopefully a lot of the conversation that we'll have today, you'll get some inspiration around how you can use it. So go ahead, put your questions into Mukana and vote them up and down. If you're watching the replay, this conversation, this is not the last time we'll have it. So go ahead and submit those questions at askofficehours.global. I wanted to, well, Alex, I'll start with you because then we've got a couple of folks with some demos to just show you how we are using it. And Alex, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah. I think that I'm constantly experimenting with a lot of those things. Of course, some of the things that that I looked at is, and I'll see if I can pull it up, but I don't have it up right now. Is one of the things that I did as a test was I said, give me a specification for a game. In this case, Tetris. I asked it to give me a full spec of Tetris, and then I asked it to give me to write it out, like write Tetris. And I think I can find this here in just a second. And it built Tetris, for me, and it was, and it is, and what I was kind of amazed by was, how effective. Here it is. Hold on, let me. So this is, let's see, this is I think the Swift version. But if you look at this here, let's see if I can focus this up a little bit. Let me make it a little bit bigger here. So this is the code for, so what basically now this is HTML, so it says updated, so I had to make a couple changes, but this is literally, this is the JS script, that's there, and it built basically, it is, It gives you the instructions on how to save it all out, and there was a little bit of back and forth. There was something that wasn't working there, but anyway, I wrote 0 lines of code, for making this actually work. It has the style. Here's the index. Here's the style.css, and you simply cut and paste it, save it into folders. Next thing I had was a Tetris game on my. It was a very basic Tetris game. But what's interesting is now I could go through it and look at, okay, well, I understand now what I did. What did it do here? I'm not going to, sell that into as a game. But I think that it was interesting and I saw someone else tweet like, hey, you can build a Tetris game. So I had to try it. And sure enough, it was about 10 minutes and I had a Tetris game running that I could play, on my browser. Another example that I just did last night, we were doing some tests. We have someone that was talking to us about possibly using Wonder Dynamics. Wonder Dynamics, of course, was just bought by. Wonder Dynamics was bought by Autodesk a week ago. So they make Wonder Studio, and so this is all. So now things will, now that there's a edgy solution that is being bought by a big company, we expect to see a lot more of it. Here's an example. I try to keep it very topical, like there was no work done to this. I wanted to prove it to the person I was sending this to, so I grabbed. There was the gymnastics competition over the weekend, and I just happened to grab Simone Biles doing a floor routine, and all I did was bring it into Wonder Dynamics. I clipped it. One of the problems with it is it doesn't let you do it. So I clipped it, brought a couple seconds in, and took one of the characters, the one that I thought would be the funniest to watch, and just clicked on the gymnast and said, "This character is that person," and then walked away. It took about 15 minutes to do, and if you look at it here he is getting ready, and you'll see some stuff that works here. You can see him. He's pretty excited. He's I wouldn't do gymnastics dressed like that. I'm just letting you know, but there is literally zero work. Now, it's not perfect. You can see you can see some stuff that isn't working perfectly. You can also see where the removal didn't work perfectly. Now it couldn't track it.
Yeah, you can see some elements of her popping
so you can
in,
see,
yeah.
And the goal there was to see where the limits are of the product. But that again, that is a $20 a month program, and if I gave it less challenging data, it'd probably do pretty well. So what you can do there, and what you're starting to see is a lot of people looking at things like this. It's not so much. You don't want to think of, you want to think about it more like jib jab. If everyone's ever heard of jib jab is this kind of funny thing you put someone's face on. This is going to turn into something a lot bigger than that. But I'm saying what's going to happen this year, especially as we go into the political season, is you're going to see a lot of fun being made of people and of other things, because it's so easy. Like, you can sit there and go, hey, I want a caricature of this politician. I load that character in, and now I can sit there and again, I'm using some found footage, but you can also throw footage in of you just doing the thing, whatever you want it to do, and it's just going to motion capture it, throw it in, and have that character do that. So the level of satire is going to go through the roof as we go into this fall, of people making fun of things. And because it's so fast, what you're going to start to see, I believe, is reaction stuff where someone gives a speech on Tuesday, and there are funny things about that speech Wednesday morning, maybe even Tuesday night. Like, that's how fast this is gonna happen. And because the technology allows people to do it, this used to be something where you rig it and you have to hand animate it. There's even something simple like this that wasn't perfect would have taken days to get all that, animation done. Now it's done in 15 minutes without any work at all. So I do think you're going to see a lot. And again, one of the things we're looking at for this is the thing that I'm looking at over the summer is there's a music video that I'm working on, and we can spec the whole thing out. We can build little characters that look like the artists, and sit there and just kind of do the things that they're going to do, play around with the cameras, because this will export the motion capture data, the camera data, everything can be exported out from Wonder Dynamics. So we can go in and previs something that is actually fairly close to what we want to do. And then be able to, figure out and go back and forth before we ever get in there. And that was, as someone who did previs 25 years ago for Star Wars, this would be a game changer for us. So Wonder Dynamics is definitely something that we're tracking pretty closely.
There's actually been a trend, like over the weekend, I saw, probably was started about a week or two ago, just on TikTok, with something similar, just with taking someone's like image and or likeness from that perspective for their movement, and then being able to overlay it. It's mainly dance, because we know where musically and how TikTok came across, but I've been seeing that a lot too. So I'm just tracking with what you're saying with the companies that are now like really developing and growing on that aspect of things. John?
Yeah, in the training industry in particular, everybody's adding AI to everything, whether or not it needs it. And so the number one category at training conferences for different tools is the AI category. And I think largely it's just basic functionality you can get from ChatGPT or another large language model tool like that. And the question is really becoming is, what's the best tool or the best way to do this? Do we need something very bespoke to solve a specific task that's specifically trained on specific content? Or can these ultra large language models with the right prompting solve the same problem for people in a faster, easier way? And I think most people are leaning towards the latter half of that equation. I think where things are going in the future is really more the co-pilot route, like we see Microsoft doing, where there will be specific teams who are building and designing custom GPTs in OpenAI's terminology. And if you haven't used custom GPTs yet, they should be rolling out to, I think, pretty much everyone with free accounts too. And in my experience, personally, they are far more useful than just using ChatGPT. So I have a custom GPT that understands my writing style and can rewrite in my own voice, or can analyze other people's voices and rewrite in theirs. I have a custom GPT that I trained on a specific technique of building training materials called learning cluster design that I spoke with the person whose intellectual property it is, and she asked me not to share it publicly, but I use it regularly. And so I'm creating a lot of custom GPTs that have specific instructions to do bespoke tasks. So instead of it being an everything machine, I'm making all these little individual anything machines. That's a very specific tool.
That's interesting that you say that, because I just, with OpenAI creating those, opening the GPT store to everyone and everyone having access, like we just see where the space is going with those customizations. And my question for you, John, is even though you've given it all of that data and trained it, how much tweaking do you find that you have to do? And have you seen a difference when GPT-4o came out?
I haven't really seen anything different with 4.0 because the model itself is the same. And I'm not using any multimodal stuff myself personally. When I do make a change, it's pretty clear that a change has been made in my custom GPTs. And most of them get to the point where I tweak them for a few hours and then they have where I want them to be. And I just leave them be. I don't find the GPT store to be very helpful because there's a lot of spam and garbage on it right now.
All right, Nigel.
Yeah, so we're talking about some quite advanced things. If people haven't started, all I wanted them to do is to encourage them to start, to play. And I think it's a minefield of acronyms and names and all this stuff. So let me tell you, I don't have the skills. So here's where I am at the moment. I have ChatGPT. I have it on my phone. I have it on most of my devices. I have subscribed for the $20 a month to get the 4.0. And I've started using the audio, the talking 2-bit by pressing on the headphones. And what I've done is I've started to bring my wife into it, and we're now having a conversation. And I think it's really interesting for someone who doesn't necessarily have the technical background to watch that engagement. And we started somewhere. We have a relative who has an illness. So we started talking about the illness and the advice and the guidance and asking questions. And it was a really powerful experience. And you don't have to, build applications, solve the world food problems. Start with something that's really easy but is relevant to you. I mean, yes, occasionally it will give you some wrong advice, but my experience at least is when it gives you bad advice, it's because you're not being specific enough. You're not asking relevant questions. And the great thing about the voice conversation model is that you can add on and do additional questions. And we're thinking of doing a road trip. So I started the conversation with it. We're thinking of driving between here and here. We have a Tesla. I don't want to drive more than 300 to 400 miles a day. Where would I stop? Where are the superchargers? And that became a really useful model. And again, you don't have to solve huge problems. Just think about the things you're doing every day, the sort of research you're doing, engage in that conversation and start simple. And I think that gave me a really clear set of understanding about where, for me, it was. Then I went on from there. And I started thinking, with ChatGPT, there are build a logo. There's, all sorts of other large language models. But start simple, but start.
Well said, Nigel. Always the voice of reason and bringing us back center. And even with you saying that, some of the conversations that just some of my counterparts have been having is just what this year, like 2022 was just the excitement, 2023, a lot of people playing around with it, 2024 being this year where people are really diving into use cases. Of course, not saying because there are those who are ahead, the trendsetters, and they've been doing that for a while, but for people also from the corporate side of things, really looking at like, how does this work for us? And so Nigel, just tracking with you where you're saying as an individual, how can I integrate this into my personal world and well-being? And I wanted to take a step back before I'm going to show a demo of how we've used it just from a workflow perspective. But just going back to last month, May, there were just so many announcements, and starting off with OpenAI and GPT-4o, and then going on to Google, like all of the dev days that they had, and that OpenAI, and for those that are listening and watching, they're being the one that having the multimodal aspect, and everyone is bringing in voice and the text and being able to use text. But where they've kind of run ahead there is the use of vision and bringing all of those elements together. And John, when I asked you if you had seen any differences, I'm seeing a lot of hallucination lately. So that I was just curious on that side of things because I've seen it online of people sharing that. looking at Google, one of the things that I think that Google is doing well is because so many people are on the platform already, whether that be using Google Drive, using Gmail, or just being in that suite, is the ability to have the assistants like right there, pull in, just going into your Drive and then getting the data, or you can prompt it from there. And I think that would be very significant for a small business owner, or an emerging business, to just being able to quickly access those, accessing those elements. And then also with, as John said, just Microsoft like Copilot from that enterprise perspective, and having teams being able to leverage that like exactly in the tool that they're using, whether it be PowerPoint presentations, etc. So I'm going to share screen really quickly with a demo. Well, let me see. I'll put voice. Let me back out of here. So we'll see if the sound will come in, and if not, I'll just talk through this. So we have an event coming up in a couple weeks, and it's mom founders, a group of us, the single mom founders, and we're going to have an assistant who's going to be helping us because we're all running our own businesses and doing this event together. So using GPT, going in and using voice and vision. And so just prompting it and telling it, hey, I'm working on this event. I'm going to hand this off to a social media person to take care of the elements of like on-site. I'm going to need them to capture this kind of like giving. So the prompt was to asking it to first and foremost, hold on. I'm capturing this image and I want you to just quickly put together a brand guide so that I don't have to sit there and figure out, like put all of those elements together. Again, it's about time affluence and being able to quickly get that data, put it together in a project scope, and then being able to hand it off to someone else. And what it did, so that was a picture. So this is using Vision. I opened up ChatGPT, took a picture of the flyer, and then here it is, just giving me all of the keywords, giving me the hex codes and all of that palette, all that information. So then now all I got to do is like, cut and paste, put that in a quick document, and then hand that off to someone else. And then also then I asked it, hey, can you just help me, give me a shot list? And just talking that into it, and then, just scrubbing through all of that. But then here it is, it's giving a shot list so that then, again, that has now cut out, I disappeared. There I am. That has just cut out time for me to just sit down, whether that is putting the shot list together and just like literally hand it off. And that without me talking through this, that's a matter of minutes doing that. So just the use case of how you can integrate that into your workflow, that's something that I see that will be growing more, and just helping people think of like what's possible when it comes to that. Guy?
Yeah, we kept needing talking heads just to fill in boxes if we wanted to prepare for our show and wanted to create some 2-up looks, 3-up looks. And previously in After Hours, we had access to these talking heads that we can go in there, but for whatever reason that went down, and we needed to keep asking people, come into this meeting real quick, can I borrow you? And so I talked with Oliver, and Oliver went into Memo Live, and we started looking at, do we want to ask some friends and just create another movie? But we were like, well, just to prove a point, just to see if this will all work the way that we want it to work, let's just use some bots. So there's this website called Synthesia. They're the number one that turns text to video in minutes. And basically what we did there was we were allowed to feed that thing a script, and there's 8 mock-up talking heads that, back in the day, there used to be services like this that you would pay and they would have real actors do this. So to be able to do this in the middle of the night, just mock up an idea and get something in the box so you can see if it actually works. So what we did was, in this example, we're launching 8 copies of Memo Live on a very high-end Mac, and we're pushing all these 24/7 into a meeting. So that machine's actually sitting right over there. But anybody in the world, 24/7, can go into vMix, Ecamm, Memo Live, and they could put all 8 of these inside of their mock-up show and play it out. And that way, they're able to see. So for education use, for corporate use, whatever, it's just a great way for people. So this is a nice way where AI comes in handy, because they do look robotic. They're not perfect, but it was just a great use case in my mind, because we're going to most likely reshoot this and use real content. But for now, it was like amazing just to prove that it can work. So we had to, get the high-end machine and having the video content in there took that hurdle away. So cool stuff.
Yeah, so just getting your proof of concept together in advance so that you can then go back in. Next question. Oh, sorry, Courtney.
Yeah, what Nigel was saying and what Guy was saying has sparked a little idea in my head, is that you could create, and maybe somebody's already done this besides the metaverse, you could create an AI cocktail party so that you could define several AI characters for people with awkward social skills. You could hone your social skills by creating this AI cocktail party. You'd create a collection of people at the cocktail party by just giving a description to OpenAI of that person, their background, what they do, et cetera, and let it flesh out all the information about each person. And you could go from person to person, engage in conversation in a cocktail party type situation. You could even have it generate little images for each character based on what AI thinks they would look like for that particular, personality. You could describe their personality. This is a brash person. You could put a couple of drunks in there and how to deal with people that have imbibed too much, so that you could kind of hone your social skills in a cocktail party type situation, all with amongst AI bots without embarrassing yourself in front of real people.
And Alex.
One of the things that we were talking about over the weekend that we're experimenting with this week is one of the problems you have with extras in a restaurant. I just thought of this because it was what Courtney was doing. If you have all these conversations that you're not going to hear, and you don't want to spend the time giving every actor in the extras the conversation that they're going to actually have. And I don't have it up here, but we did one where we said, give me 20 different conversations they're having at 20 different tables in this movie. And what it gives you as a script, you can literally just hand everybody a script like, this is the thing, these are the things you're talking about during this shot, and it just made up all of them, and so it's not something the writer wants to necessarily have to do, but it actually is, appropriate. If you actually read the lips, you'd actually get something that actually might actually make sense there. One of the things that the other thing to remember is that when you're doing this, a lot of times it doesn't come out perfect. I was on Leo's show yesterday on Ask the Tech Guy. And he was talking about, I don't know how we got into this, but he was like, we were asking for a band. We were talking about a band, and he said Johnny Ebola and the Malaria 5, was the thing. And so I just threw that into Midjourney. I was like, what with that? What is that going to look like? And so we started getting these you can see all these different ones. Now, what I did, what makes this work is things like in the style of David Edward Byrd, which did a lot of psychedelic stuff in the 70s. And so you get all these different looks. This one was good, but this text was a mess. And I was like, I'd rather just not even have that text. And so what you can do there is here, you can see that this and the Malaria 5 is kind of messed up here. And I just want to get rid of it and just call it, the album will be called Pandemic. And I was able to just select it and just remove it. You just select it and say, instead of painting it out. And all I did there to do that is if I select this and I just simply, I did this. Now I didn't want to take out, it can be pretty heavy handed. So I went like this, then I hold down my shift key and I just remove the top of that D from the selection. So I want to be pretty, and then I just do generative fill. And I just said, remove text. And I use this all the time. It is this kind of thing. Like I just need to remove one little thing or fix something or extend it. I think this is probably my most common use of generative fill is to remove things. See, and that is not a trivial removal. Just so you know, like when you look at that, it kept all the gradient perfect. It rebuilt the legs. It did all the things that it needed to do to make that actually work. And there's other things that a lot of times. Now I don't know what this would do because it's just kind of a poster, but a lot of times you can use Photoshop also to extend things. I had a client last week, I think the week before last week, hand me something that wasn't the right aspect ratio, and it's a picture, it's a photo. I created a canvas that was the right aspect ratio. There was there's some black gaps on either side. I just selected those. I didn't even tell it anything. I just hit generative fill go, and it just You just filled it out, and it looked exactly like it was part of that photo. So, I think that the Photoshop, I thought Photoshop wasn't going to be able to, I was like, when it came out, I was like, it's okay. Like it's not Midjourney. It doesn't have to be Midjourney. What it's really good at is fixing things and removing things and adding things. And once you get used to it, if you're not doing this in Photoshop, and it's the main reason I have to admit, kudos to Adobe. I was pretty close to I don't know if I need Photoshop anymore. I'm doing everything in Affinity Photo and everything's great. The generative fill is a game changer. It is, I use it on every single project that I do now in Photoshop. I just need to add this little thing. I need to add that thing over there, fix this thing, take this thing out. We had one where someone sent me a photo of a book that they didn't want in the picture behind plexiglass outside. And I just selected the book and I said, remove book. Gone. It was just, and so it's pretty incredible.
And Courtney.
Yeah, I was going to ask Alex if, since Midjourney created that original poster, can generative fill in Photoshop fix the M and fix the text and keep the exact same style, but, remove that extra staff in the M?
It's hard to ask it to do those things. Yeah. Fixing text is still really hard for generative AI. You can remove it. Sometimes you can add it, but fixing the text is something that is still, I find, very challenging.
Joey is Jolie, or did you make it Jolie? Was that the original?
No, it's just, I think I put an I in there.
Yeah.
Those are kind of, and some of them are correct and some of them are not. And this one, and this would probably take a little more work to fix it. And again, if I was showing this to a client, it's not that I want to use the image that I created. It is, here's a smack. I don't really use these generally as final products. What I love is the fact that I can build 30 styles, because these are just a handful of styles. There's a whole bunch of, I can have very different styles being used all the way through and show the client, stuff that they would never get to see otherwise. You would never, unless you had a huge art department, you would never get to see all the different ways that you could look at that album and have the client really think through that. And that's what's kind of amazing.
And I think, Alex, to what you said there, now those fonts are slightly more custom, but from a workflow perspective, there's the possibility of bringing that into Canva. Canva, I will say, has been doing well with with text, where you'd be able to generate your image and then going into their, they've got one for a text tool. So you bring that, use the image in, take the text tool. Now, the only thing is that it's going to try to match it as best as possible to the system or whatever fonts they have, and they have a plethora of thousands. They've got a plethora of fonts. So I don't know that it would work well with that one. But again, going back to that idea of workflow, and so potentially that could be a solve there.
And again, this is just a different seed of the same, pretty much the same prompt, right? So a completely different view of what that looks like. And so those are, that's the kind of stuff that you can, showing 20 different versions of that is really powerful as far as getting creative juices going. Again, I think that eventually we'll see more of this go into final work, but because of the copyright stuff, because of a lot of the other things, you're kind of like, well, we'll see. But at the same time, if you're going to spend a bunch of time working on a piece of artwork, having 80 different versions to kind of throw against the wall and think about the feel that you like or don't like, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and I see the questions building up, so we'll go to you, Bill, and then we'll get into the questions.
I won't spend much time. It's just been an interesting experience to me because I do a lot of narration and I'm looking for my next audiobooks. Once upon a time, I would go on to the ACX system, which is where, I'm still a relative beginner. I've been doing this for about a year and a half now. And it used to be that I could tell immediately visually what books were serious by virtue of the cover art that they posted with the desire for a narrator to do them. Ever since this generative AI stuff spread across the world, it is taking me much more time to find the projects I want to be involved with, because even the absolutely worst, most incompetently written things have lovely cover art that looks just like a best-selling novel, and you have to dig down 2 or 3 more levels. Where once upon a time I used to be able to say, okay, these 20 projects, obviously nobody's putting any effort into them at all. Well, now we're in a world where hardly any effort at all generates acceptable results. It's a weird thing that I'm facing. Just my experience.
All right, Alexander, let's get into these questions.
All right, first question, the second hour is from Douglas Carmichael. Do you think we'll see hooks to connect Gen AI platforms directly into digital audio workstations?
Alexander?
Well, I mean, there's already hooks with respect to, for example, with Pro Tools, if you can actually write to their proprietary plugin format, which is AAX, and all you need to do is create a developer account, and they have excellent documentation. Now, my question would be to you, what exactly do you need from generative AI? Is it that you're looking for it to create a drum beat for you, maybe just so you can get some ideas happening for a song? We're already seeing that now with the release of Apple's Logic Pro 11 has a session player and some other AI features like the stem separation feature to recover old recordings and separate voice from all the other instruments. So we're already seeing that now, and I'm sure we're going to see more than just one DAW support features like that. I'm sure Pro Tools and Cubase, all that stuff, we're going to see very rapid development in the next 2 to 3 years with features like that.
Next question.
Next one's from Banks Metter in Columbia, South Carolina. Has anyone had success with a particular AI when it comes to storyboarding?
John?
Yeah, what I typically do for tasks like storyboarding is use ChatGPT first and get a text version of it. So I'll use it as a thinking partner and say, give me an outline, write me up ideas for a storyboard, and then I'll ask it to write prompts to generate the images. ChatGPT doesn't do good with lots of different things at once. It confuses and merges information together based on how large language models work. So I would take it one step at a time and have separate tasks and separate conversations for each of those tasks to get a little bit closer to what you want.
Next question.
Craig McFarlane in Boston, Massachusetts asks, has the line moved for you regarding when to disclose that content comes from or is processed by AI?
Nigel?
Not really, because I don't trust any of it is my issue. I think the reality is we're going to see a huge amount of pressure politically to have things, this is adjusted, this AI used. Everything you see in the media is adjusted, changed, edited, cleaned, something. Whether they use AI or hand-drawn, it doesn't mean anything. And I think we'll see a huge push, and eventually we'll all have to get over the fact that nothing we're seeing is as it was.
John?
Yeah, I agree with Nigel. 90% of the time when I'm using AI, I use a human AI human approach where I start with something, put it into ChatGPT, and then I edit it again as myself. And I find that makes it sound a little bit less likely to say things like delving into the intricacies of whatever common phrases you hear in generated muck.
Next question.
Next question is from Oliver Breidenbachen from Boix Software. What is the best AI tool to turn long-form video into a series of reels?
Alexander?
The best one that I have found so far is opuspro.ai. There may be others. I know we've used it on the panel for creating shorts here for our show, and it works. I've been using it on and off for about a year or so, and it's developing at a very fast pace. I still find it incredibly frustrating because it still produces a lot of junk. Sometimes it'll surprise you and create something really good. Other times it generates a lot of stuff that's just completely unusable without editing it pretty heavily. They did just introduce a new version of their built-in editor, which I haven't tested yet. The old editor I found was very buggy and slow, and this new one's supposed to be a lot faster and have a lot new tools. It has ways of removing superfluous words in your language like uhs and ums and awkward pauses in your speech. That part actually works quite well. So I would take a look at Opus Pro because they're just developing that thing like crazy.
Yeah, +1 on the Opus. Opus Clip, right? Is that when you say Opus Pro? Are we saying the same? Okay. Yeah. Opus Clip. And they have made a lot of updates in the last month. You can schedule all those things. So that helps on the media management side of it. I also would add into that Descript. Now, Opus for automatically doing that for you. So you just upload and it's pulling, because the benefit to that is is it's also doing some SEO, search engine optimization, and telling you what it believes will be the best performing clips. So from that perspective of just one click, and then you go in and clean up and add your B-roll or anything like that, they've also got AI B-roll. So if you highlight an area and you say that you want it to generate some B-roll for you. So there's that aspect, or you highlight an area and that's where you want it to put some stock footage. So from that perspective, Opus is great. Descript has much more features if you want to fine tune and have more control. So you can create some templates, put your video clips in. It's already set up in a certain way, but there's more manual labor to that. So just adding it so that you can then figure out which way you want to go. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia asks, can Liberty talk about our AI content on TikTok and what experience means to her?
So thank you for that question, Tony. What that Tony's just referring to is a lot of the content. I'm doing a lot of tutorials and training. 2 months ago, I became an AI coach for a fund, which essentially means just helping some of the companies there that are tech equity companies. So they're doing workforce development and just helping them figure out how they can use AI in their content and or their business systems and workflow. So since I'm doing that, it's also pushing me to create and come up with strategies to help them. So I've just been putting some of that content out on TikTok, meanwhile testing some of my social media chops of being more consistent on the platform. So it's been interesting to just see how people are engaging with it, some of the questions that people ask. As Nigel, again, I just keep coming back to Nigel because so many people are asking some very seemingly fundamental questions, and while part of the world is like way over here, there's still a part here that is like, what is ChatGPT? What is the difference between Gemini? What is Copilot? Co-what? So I'm testing out just the balance of being able to put some starter content out there to see what questions people have around that. So it's been a fun experience, and doing a lot of repurposing as well. So that's what my experience has been like so far on TikTok. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas asks, Alex, you drove up to twit.tv in Petaluma for a show. What is the outlook for Twit TV and similar enterprises in the future with AI invading their niche?
We are going to bring that question back and go on to the next question.
Next question is from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. If you were to use OpenAI to design something or come up with ideas, what would be some of the questions to ask it?
John?
Yeah, I still go back to the basic structure of a prompt where I give it a role and I say, ChatGPT, you are X, Y, or Z. Maybe it's an instructional designer or a videographer, and then give it some context. Your job is to do X, Y, and Z overall. Give it a specific task. I want you to give me a list of 10 ideas. Then you can give it some criteria. Give me the list in bullet point format with a heading and then 3 subheadings, and then that would be the format portion of it. So role, context, task, criteria, format, and you can exclude some of those steps if you need to.
Nigel?
Yeah, I was using ChatGPT to design a logo for me, and I discovered that what I was trying to do was think like a computer, and I stopped trying to think like a computer, and I started thinking like a marketing person. So I just started asking it, make me feel the colors more comfortable. You know, I started using descriptive and not technical words. And it was like, oh, fine. And so I think one of the things you have to do when you get your mind around this is stop trying to think you're talking to a computer and use your professional skills to ask a professional question and let it try and answer that professional question. You get a very different response.
That's great synchronicity there, Nigel, because I was going to say, depending on what the project is, and then, yes, taking these marketing and communication skills, then with that persona that John shared, so, giving it it is not connecting. Oh, I will talk through while I get my stylus to connect, but in giving it the role, sorry, y'all, I was trying to get that straight there for that.
Cool effect, though.
Right? In giving it the role, but then also just making sure that I've given it a lot of content or context so that this is the audience I'm trying to reach and this is what I wanted to. So giving it some background information first so that then when it now goes into acting like whomever, whatever that role, and then when I ask the question, because you got to remember the GPT it's a large language model. So it's got all this data, but we want to help it to refine the data to give us a better answer. So that's the tip that I would add on there to just help getting more fine-tuned response. John?
Yeah, and if you do have especially large prompts, remember that ChatGPT will weight the information at the start of the prompt more than it will at the end of the prompt. And it will also weight, if you use the same words over and over again, it will more heavily weight that part of your response. So if you said 16 by 9 at the start of a prompt, it would highlight that part of your question and think that's more important than the content of the image you're creating. Whereas if you had 16 by 9 at the end, if it's a long prompt, it might think that's more of a suggestion than a requirement. So you just need to make sure you tell it those things like you must do these things or you must not do. Must nots don't work very well, but must do's are generally work well.
Next question.
Craig McFarlane in Boston, Massachusetts asks, where are you looking to learn about new AI tools or ways to use them?
Where is everyone getting all of their information next to office hours, of course? John?
Yeah, there's quite a few creators on LinkedIn that I really like. Josh Cavalier is probably my favorite. He's specifically in an instructional design approach to using ChatGPT, but there's a dozen or so people I follow.
Yeah, likewise, I follow Ali K. Miller. She's more on the business side, former Googler, and also just the number of folks that in my community that are doing some different things from the creative side as well. And then Twitter is also a good repository. So LinkedIn and Twitter. Courtney?
Yeah, I like Matt Wolf's Future Tools site. He has a great collection of these future tools, and they're organized by the types of tools, and they're all AI. So they're great collection. He does YouTube videos on what's new this week on YouTube, so you can keep an eye on his website because he usually keeps you up to date on what's the newest and latest in AI type tools.
Next question.
Next one's for me. Do any more affordable non-subscription photo editing apps such as Affinity or Pixelmator have similar AI text delete features that Photoshop has?
John?
It's not as good, but ChatGPT does have built-in editing tools for their photos, including the ability to delete text on an album art, because I was doing the same thing Alex was in the background.
Next question.
Oliver Breinbach from Boeing Software asks, I've been using Merlin to create table of content style descriptions of the Mimo Lab recordings on YouTube. Is anyone using any alternative tools to summarize a video and create a table of content with links?
Interesting. So I have not seen the Get Merlin, but so to just in creating the table of contents, does he mean for to put it in YouTube? Is that what, am I reading it correctly? Yeah, that'd be a ChatGPT prompt or something that I've also been just using as well is comparing the different chat platforms. And then so sometimes I will start something maybe in ChatGPT, but just understanding like, this is maybe something that's better to put through Gemini, which is Google's version. So just basically fundamentally using the chatbots. Next question.
Next question is from Kjetil Vold in Tromsø, Norway. What capabilities would you like to see in a first-gen AGI?
John?
Yeah, generally I've seen people define AGI as the point at which an AI becomes smarter than a human and can teach itself. So the main thing I would want it to do is to care for humanity as a species. And secondly, to be able to learn really quickly, because I think it would learn things that we don't even know that we want it to know faster than we can prompt it to.
Next question.
Craig McFarlane in Boston, Massachusetts asks, how long do you try out a new tool before passing or sticking with it for longer?
Ooh, any takers on this? For me, it's a functionality aspect of it, of whether I check with what the industry is saying, but if it is something that is truly functional, then I'm going to stick with it so that I'll be able to see like, okay, I'll look at their documents and look at their YouTube and see what other content they're putting out to just kind of see where it's going and if there's any growth happening there. But if it's functional and it works, you pick the tool that works for you. Alexander?
Well, I always start with price because a lot of these tools can be very expensive over time. So I look at can I actually afford to pay for that every month? And number two would be obviously functionality. And I find it pretty quick when I start to use this stuff. It's usually fairly self-evident whether or not it's actually going to provide a lot of value. And oftentimes the cost can be justifiable if it actually frees your time up. If something like, for example, Opus Pro, if that frees up 6 to 10 hours every day of cutting up long form content, then that actually could be very valuable for you, and it would be worth it in that example. So I always look at that first and then find out whether or not it's actually functional. I think we lost.
Did we lose?
Sorry, we lost. I'll go next.
Did we lose Liberty?
While we try and get Liberty
Oh my
back.
gosh. Courtney, you're next. Go.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the thing that increases stickiness is, of course, a subscription. If you sign up for a year's worth or it's a monthly subscription, that tends to make you use that tool a lot more. So I like to go out and look at the free tools and try them and play the field. And if I really am impressed with something, I might subscribe to it and stick with it for a while. But there's always something new. AI is such a fast-moving area that, if you go to that site I just mentioned, Future Tools, it's divided. You just click on a box there, and it will show you all the tools that are come out for one particular genre, like generative code, music, social media, etc. And it'll just show you the tools. And there's hundreds of them to choose from, and they change daily. You can sort them by the newest added, so you can find the latest and greatest.
Yeah, personally, I find my intellectual capital space, the amount of time I have to deal with brand new things, shrinking as I get busier and busier. And for some reason, I'm getting busier and busier these days. So, Guy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, there's a couple like that Opus clip where I tried it, and there is a lot of weeding through, but it comes down to, does this tool actually save you time? So an example would be with ChatGPT 3.5 Pro, when it first started really getting some hubbub about being able to upload files. I took some PDFs that were a year's worth of monthly financials, and I had a request to get them into quarterlies, and I don't have a big staff to do all this stuff. So I just uploaded them to ChatGPT, and I said, hey, give me quarterlies based on these PDFs. And it sat there. I mean, there was hundreds of numbers. This would have taken me forever. And when it output in Excel, and I asked it to output an Excel file. So it went from PDF to Excel, and I double checked the work, and I was like, okay, I'm a believer. So that's the thing, is if you run it through a typical scenario and it outputs and you double check the work and it's accurate and it does everything you want, then, it's a winner. But you're going to have to allow yourself some time with any of these tools to see if it'll work for you. Like the synthesis stuff, like it's so robotic that I don't know if I could use it for anything productive, but it for that previs or being able to prove a point to investors or something like that, it's a great tool. So it's just a matter of where in your workflow does it make sense to say, let's go ahead and continue to use this, and at what monthly? Because like Opus Clip, I paid $150 for the year, and I'm not even using it anymore. So
that happens to me a good little bit too. Courtney, you have a follow up?
Yeah, I was going to ask Guy, how accurate are those? Because I've seen some horror stories for people that are doing just what you said there, consolidating financial data from a bunch of information in a PDF or from a spreadsheet that it uploaded in. And mine was a lot of errors
perfect.
in it,
Mine was perfect. I double, triple checked it because this had to go to a lawyer. So it was just like, wow, this is perfect. Like the people that I would have hired to take care of this for me would have been at $75 an hour, and it probably would have been about $4 or 5 hours worth of work. So, it saved me way more than the $20 a month that the ChatGPT Pro cost.
That was ChatGPT, or was that Opus? What did you say?
No, that's ChatGPT, the 3.5, the professional version, where you could upload files. So, with the non-paid version, you can't upload files. So it's the paid version that you can put PDFs. Yeah.
Great.
Interesting. Let's go on to the next question.
Next question is from Rob Collins in Kansas City, Missouri. Do you prefer to use the public cloud-based AI solutions or use a private AI you host yourself when you can?
Nobody's raised a hand on this, and I think this is going to be a big topic going forward. What's the best way? Do you want to be inside the main thing, or do you want to kind of privatize it to yourself? I'd love to be able to have the time to do an experiment, which is to give 10 different people a specific script of prompts, have them all log into the public chat GPT on their own thing and read literally syllable for syllable that in. My interest would be, what would be the variance in what came out of it? Is ChatGPT's algorithm looking back at you a little bit and saying, my history with this particular prompt deviser leads me to think that they would be happy to see these kind of results, and a different person would get different results out of that? Or is there tremendous similarity because the exact same complex specific prompt yields the same thing because ChatGPT does things the same way? What are the differential seeds built into the program, whatever? I just find that a little fascinating now as we're all trying to get our heads around how this stuff works for us. Guy, do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, it was kind of scary the other day when I went to use ChatGPT 4.0 and I went somewhere in the preferences and it said who I was, and I was asking questions for a client about a corporation that we're looking at forming, and it had put me in there as the head of this company, and I was like,
Ooh.
oh my gosh, like, so if that data went out somewhere else, it could have really harsh, repercussions. So
yeah, you're exposed a little bit.
Yeah,
your client's
so
IP, baby.
I remember when Amazon and Apple just said, no, you can't. We don't want our developers using this non-private stuff. So I'd imagine now that with these faster machines, we're seeing, the highest end MacBook, you could just load Llama on there, and you could have your own little private AI, universe. And so I think that we're going to see more corporations just wanting to keep it in house because this leak possibility of it putting information back out. I don't know if it's able to do that, if it's able to somehow disclose that information, but it's scary if it can disclose that, because you ask it some of these private things and all of a sudden it answers that question to somebody else with your answer. That's going to be very scary.
Yeah, John Snyder, you had some thoughts?
Yeah, when Guy said that, ChatGPT does learn about you, and it creates a profile about you, and it's in your settings. So you can see the facts that it knows about you that will guide its responses to you. So Guy, you could check that for one. Our organization has a policy using AI tools that just says no proprietary information or no patient information. And so that's the guidance we follow. There are LLM-based tools that theoretically should use the language model that they are built on and only reference certain libraries. And I know Amazon has one called Amazon Q for internal documents, as well as Microsoft's Copilot and ChatGPT's corporate licenses all theoretically should do that, where it uses permissions levels to either disclose or not disclose information to individual users. But again, you learn these things by making mistakes, and it can be a costly mistake when you learn them.
Interesting. Do we need a cloud HIPAA process in there somewhere to keep it safe? Let's go to the next question.
Next one's for me. Do we anticipate AI tools to become more affordable over time? For small budgets, based on the amount of minutes I require of Opus Pro to generate short content, it costs me $1,000 a year.
John Snyder, what do you think?
Yeah, at least generally speaking, the models do become cheaper over time based on the number of tokens you put in. But they also become more capable, which requires more token count and more compute power. So I would suggest that likely this is the cost it will be for more functionality as it grows. But if you do use the API-based tools, you should see a reduction in cost depending on the model you're using.
Courtney, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the pricing is all over the place. Microsoft is still trying to figure out, who owns half of OpenAI, is trying to figure out how to monetize Copilot, and they've got 27 million different versions of it. It's included in Windows 11, and you can use it for free. And it's multimodal. You can generate pictures with DALL-E 3. You can ask it questions and it responds. And it's built into the operating system. But then there's a pro version, and then there's a business version, and then there's a programmer version, and that you are all subscription based, and they're trying to figure out the pricing on all that stuff. And I don't think they've quite figured out the model, because the training is very expensive, and they're still trying to find out if it's going to be profitable and what to charge for it. So you can go free, and generally the free versions just take a lot longer. So it depends on how much you think your time is worth. The more you pay, the faster it is, or at least supposedly the faster it is. And the more people that use it at the higher rate, the slower it is. So you have to weigh off the amount of time that you want to invest in waiting for it to give you an answer, and how much you want to spend monthly, and if it's going to return on your investment for that monthly expenditure. And of course, the models change, and what was good once can now be superseded by something that's cheaper and faster tomorrow.
Let's move to the next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas asks, OpenAI unveils ChatGPT EDU, an affordable version for universities, including GPT 4.0 access, custom GPT creation, and higher message limits than the free tier. Is it time to start officehours.edu?
John Snyder, what do you think?
No, I don't think so.
Well, that's a simple declarative answer. I like it. Instead of all this discussion, they're cutting to the chase. I have no idea. Education really has kind of unusual needs that are specific to them. Guy Cochran, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's, it costs a lot of money for these guys to run these cards, essentially, these NVIDIA cards to take these LLMs and crunch them down really quickly. And so I think it's a great service to educators, whether or not it's OpenAI or somebody else, but somebody with some big money should be letting the students of the future and the teachers learn how to use this stuff and parse it down to use it effectively, because otherwise you get a bunch of people that are just trying to do it themselves, versus these educators should be getting taught and best practices, and then also how to spot, people that are using it for writing their term paper that shouldn't be writing their term paper. So, but yeah, there's definitely other companies, Google with Llama, that are being a little more forthright in giving rather than charging. And so I think that's OpenAI's model, is try to help the community, and that's what they should be doing.
Okay, let's move to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, how do you think educators will reshape how they teach and assess in the age of Gen AI?
Alex is going to help out. Alex?
Yeah, I think that the ones that are thinking ahead that we're starting to see are really jumping on AI and figuring out how they have students learn how to use it for their papers, not necessarily completely trying to resist it, because resistance is really becoming harder and harder and harder. And, the teachers, the first year, I think the teachers got into this desperate, we're going to make everybody I have 2 kids in high school right now. We're going to make everybody handwrite their papers. Like, everyone has to handwrite their papers, and they have to do it in class, and and if you want to have somebody hate history, have them do that for a term, the students just hated the teacher. They hated the subject. They hated, it went into, and they got to a pretty close to, near insurrection by the students and the parents, because people like me were starting to call teachers and become difficult. because it's just complete waste of time. It was a waste of their time. It was a waste of my time. It's a waste of a bunch of people's time, and so we started becoming very vocal, and they gave up on that. So now I think figuring out how to use these tools, I think teachers have a huge opportunity to use the tools to help them. I use ChatGPT when I get ready for a lot of our shows here to think about simpler ways to say things. Metaphors, and give me some metaphors on how to explain this. Explain this to a 5th grader. Explain this to a, like this, and I'll do it. I already know the subject, but it's great to see other ways of thinking about how to say something or how to use a metaphor or a comparison. And then, of course, tons and tons of images. One of the things that makes, whether it's classrooms or corporate or anything else, that makes a presentation fun is great images. And you can have so much fun with Midjourney of creating things. And my favorite thing is, in the style of Pixar, over plain white with a 20% buffer, and you get these, characters, that you can tell it whatever you want. You get those characters, you put them in there, and people people of all ages, kids of all ages, seem to enjoy a fun slide every once in a while that is explaining something you're trying to talk about, but isn't necessarily exactly the most dry.
Next question.
Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, PA asks, what subscriptions are the panel using and what are the best values? Are any of the AI consolidation services that purport to access several services into a single interface or subscription worthwhile?
John?
Yeah, I subscribe to GPT, ChatGPT Plus or whatever it's called, and that's the only one I found enough value to subscribe to regularly.
Courtney?
I don't pay. I use the free plugin called Perplexity, which uses a variety of sources, and you can use it to summarize web pages, or you can just ask it any question. It's a text only. I think it's text only for a modal right now, but it's a great little plugin for Chrome.
Next question.
Roz Humphreys from Comox, British Columbia, Canada asks, can someone give an outline of the tiers/usages, tools of ChatGPT 4.0 and sublevels 3.5?
Alex?
I mean, I don't know how to describe the tiers perfectly, but what I would say is that most of us are using 4.0. like I don't know of anybody that's going back to 3.5 or 4.4 ChatGPT 4. I mean, usually these are, you can use them as comparisons, but unless there's some reason that you're being restricted because of, and I don't know, I pay for ChatGPT, so I'm not sure exactly what's in the free level versus what's in the paid level. But I would say that most of us just keep moving with whatever the most modern version of ChatGPT is. Haven't seen it go backwards very much.
Yeah, the cherry on top there is everyone has access to 4.0 right now, but it's how much you can do on that level. So if you're on the free level, I've heard that you only get a couple of prompts before it throttles you down. So that being something that you want to look into. And that wraps another great AI conversation, another great second hour. Thank you so much, producers, for all of your comments and all of the commentary in the chat, and of course of all of your questions. And to the panel, thank you for your insights and just sharing your experiences with AI. So we'll be back with another topic like this in the near future. And of course, our production team, for without which this would not be possible. Thank you all so much. Now, we've traveled 60,000 miles, 96,000 kilometers. That's 472 million bananas for scale, not AI bananas, bananas. All right, y'all. We look forward to seeing you. And for the rest of the schedule, head over to officehours.global. Bye.
I'm going to go back to hallucinating on my computer.
You used to have to pay for that. Now the computers do it for free.
Right. Thank y'all. Great stuff. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, back-end team. You know how much I love y'all.